We have to start the webinar. It is now recording.
Okay, so good evening. My name is Amy Broughton. I serve as the chair of the Water Resources Advisory Board. It's 6 p.m. and I'd like to call to order the August 17th, 2026 meeting. Our first order of business is the approval of the July RAB meeting minutes. Did all members present have an opportunity to review? Any question?
So I'm noticing, just not to be difficult, but I'm noticing that now the meeting, the minutes are a little more limited. It's more topics we discuss rather than substance. I don't know. Don't feel to see what maybe Catherine, but I would feel about it if it should be, or I just got used to the other format. Those chairs. So.
But I can speak to that. Good evening, board. I'm Joe Tadiucci. I'm the director of the utilities department. So we made that shift, I think, starting last month, if I remember correctly. The board and commission process is kind of managed by our city clerk's office. And it has recently undergone a review. And there's a desire to have consistency across I think there are 30-ish boards across the city. And so some boards have had detailed minutes like we've tended to have, or it's a verbatim account of like public comment. But we all needed to kind of get ours in line with what the rest of the city is doing and make them consistent. So that there's probably not really an opportunity to deviate from that. And I would say now the Zoom meetings and the recordings are published and made available to the public after the fact. So if somebody really wanted a word for word account of the whole meeting,
There is a right.
they have access.
Okay. Well, okay. Switch my concern. All right, thanks.
So they can go to the meeting minutes, see what the topics were. If they're interested in pursuing further, they can go and find the recording and even make their own transcript minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the meeting minutes?
Move their approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the July minutes?
Aye.
Raise your hand, aye. Okay, seeing and hearing none, we'll move to approve the minutes as written. A vote of 3-0. Catherine is online.
Catherine raised her hand.
She raised her hand also.
Hello.
Hi, Catherine. Next on the agenda, we're going to invite members of the public to speak. Joanna Bloom is our technical host and is going to provide the rules of engagement. Thanks, Joanna.
Great, thanks, Amy. Hello, my name is Joanna Bloom and I'm serving as the technical host for this meeting. We're sharing a few slides of the virtual meeting rules that we follow that ensure a balance between transparency and digital security. Those up in just a moment. Please provide your full name to participate in open or public comment. If your full name is not currently displayed, please update it in Zoom, or you can ask for assistance through the Q&A function. There is no chat feature for this meeting, but the Q&A function can be used for any Zoom connectivity issues. Video control features are limited to city officials, employees, and invited speakers. If you participate in a comment period, I'll unmute you when you're recognized to speak. And after I have unmuted you, please say your first and last name, and we'll begin a 3-minute timer once you begin your comments. And let me just make sure there's nobody on the phone. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you so much for your participation. And if you want to go ahead and raise your hand now, I'll call on folks in the order that their hands were raised. Let me give everybody just a second. I do see a number of hands. All right, so we have Catherine Sunval, followed by Claire Gallagher, and I'm going to go ahead and allow you to speak.
Hi, I'm Catherine Sunval, and I'm speaking because I received a letter from the utilities board, or utilities group that my property in Greenbelt Meadows at 5419 Illini Way, and I live next to Dry Ditch number 2, is going to be flooded with this construction of a dam, I guess like flood control dam, and that my property is now in a new designation of being potentially under 2 feet of water that it wouldn't have been before the building of this dam. So this type of letter is very scary, and I don't appreciate this kind of communication of a scary letter like that. I sure hope this isn't what you were trying to communicate to people who are in Greenbelt Meadows, that we are to prepare for this dam directing water into our neighborhood with the construction of a dam that's supposed to prevent flooding. So there's a problem with this communication. So please send us new letters to further clarify that this isn't what you meant. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Claire Gallagher, followed by Randall Weiner. Oops, and we lost Claire. We'll come back to her. If I see her log back on again, Randall, we'll move to you, followed by Gordon McCurry. Randall, you should be able to unmute.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
Great. So I'm Randall Weiner. I'm an attorney in town, an environmental attorney. And I represented the group that Save South Boulder that's looking to find a different way to have the South Boulder Creek flood mitigation project constructed. We've been engaged in litigation. We lost in the trial court against the city, and the issue is up on appeal. Oral arguments were held on May 27, about 3 months ago, and I provided for your packet the opening brief and one of the decisions of the trial court judge, Michael Kozlarsik. Did you all receive that? Is that in your packet of materials? Great. So on page 8 of your packet from staff, it states that there's a new strategy for financing the SBC project. It says the original delivery strategy, you can follow along if you can turn to page 8 of your packet. The original delivery strategy anticipated financing the project through bond proceeds, allowing construction costs to be funded over time. Because the litigation has prevented the city from proceeding with bond financing as originally planned, the project has instead been restructured to use a cash-funded approach. So a couple of points. In seeking fees, the city had a hearing before Judge Michael Kozlarczyk. He said plaintiffs presented reasonable arguments that Tabor was violated. That's in the order on attorney's fees, page 73. And personally, I think it's a close call on what the Court of Appeals will do. One of two things will happen. First, the city could win. And then there's really no reason to do a different source of funding. Just proceed with the bonds. And you don't have to do what the staff or the city council said, do a lengthened project requiring increased costs. Just, do what you need to do. If my clients win, if we're successful, then this and the Court of Appeals rules that the city charges are taxes and not fees, then the 76 million in charges to build the dam will need to go to a vote. It doesn't matter whether the charges are paid by bonds or what was termed here a cash-funded approach. Either approach would require voter approval.
And then we hit the 3 minutes. Do you want to finish your sentence and then I'll move on to Gordon McCurry and then followed by Emily Reynolds.
Sure, I urge you to not proceed with any kind of construction until the Court of Appeals rules. They heard the arguments 3 months ago. The decision is pending. You ought to wait and see what happens. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Claire, I got your note in the chat. If you wouldn't mind raising your hand again, just so I don't miss you, we'll come back to you in just a second. No worries at all. Let me go ahead and. Gordon, you should be able to unmute.
Okay. Hi all, this is Gordon McCurry. I was on the RAB from 2019 to 2024. It's nice to see some familiar faces out there. I'm calling in today to talk about the same issue that the previous speakers have been, which is the bond issue having to do with the South Boulder Creek Phase 1 flood mitigation project. Most of you have not followed this, I assume, being on the RAB fairly recently, but there have been a long history of concerns raised by the community and by me also when I was on the RAB and subsequent to that regarding both technical components of it and what I want to speak to today is the increase in cost that is, I thought, displayed pretty nicely in your RAB packet. A roughly $10 million increase in costs, which is on the order of about, 15% or so increase over the last couple of years. So it's $76 million cost right now, which is a significant cost element for the city to bear. As most of you are aware, the utility department is an enterprise fund, and so our fees for the water, the wastewater, and then the stormwater/flood fund the various projects that are incurred. But you're also aware then to fund some of those projects, including this South Boulder Creek project, relates to raising our utility rates. And I think one of the things that you'll see in your packet today is the proposed rate increase. When I was on the RAB, I approved those every time because a lot of the rate increases have to do with playing catch up for infrastructure that's aging. But in this case, for the South Boulder Creek project, it's a new project. Granted, it's been going on for a long time, but the big costs are about to start. As you see in your packet, 2027 is the first year where big construction outlays are going to occur. So I'm thinking to encourage you to really think about whether this is the process that you want to go through of just to approve the CIP for this year, which includes, of course, the 2027 costs with respect to this particular project. It's very high cost, and it will put all of us residents with increased utility bills, of course. And I think what would be appropriate on something of this nature is to request a third-party review, an external third-party review of this particular project, particularly in light of the increased costs over the last couple of years. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Gordon. We now have Emily Reynolds followed by Claire Gallagher. And if there are others online that would like to speak, please virtually raise your hand so I don't miss you. Emily, you should be able to unmute.
Thanks very much for this opportunity to address you. Thank you. I would like to talk about the South Boulder Creek Flood Mitigation Project, and I find that it's not at all clear to me why the city of Boulder seems to be inviting yet more litigation by imagining that the ineffective dam design for South Boulder Creek is satisfactory. This has become a problem of epic proportions, not only in the cost overruns, but also in the absurdity of not demanding that the plan be submitted for review by independent third-party engineering experts in flood management and dam construction to assess the safety, feasibility, and suitability. Is there anyone on the Boulder City Council who is a water engineer? Are there people in the utilities department, I assume, who are experts in flood mitigation? water flood management and dam construction? Does the utilities department automatically rubber stamp whatever Nuria and the council put on the table, even if it puts lives at risk? We hear a lot of lip service about best practices and fact-based decisions. None of that seems to have occurred with the South Boulder Creek flood mitigation project. Before the next flood and the deaths that may occur, why not take some time to analyze rather than ignore the hydrology and topography of the South Boulder Creek floodplain? Don't you think it would be useful to test the untried groundwater conveyance strategies that risk failure and destruction of the jurisdictional wetlands in the state national area on both sides of Highway 36? Don't you think it would also be useful to look at Veely Channel, which has not been redesigned to accommodate the vastly increased amount of floodwater that the project would require to carry? And have we decided which neighborhoods near the channel that we're most willing to risk to catastrophic flooding? I think we need quite a bit more than just virtue signaling on this one. I feel like we're putting lives in danger. I ask you, please act responsibly. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emily. Our last speaker, unless somebody else raises their hand, is Claire Gallagher. Claire, you should be able to unmute. Okay, try now, Claire. Sorry.
That's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm a PhD candidate in environmental studies at CU. Part of my dissertation studies outdoor recreation as part of social ecological systems. And I've been researching CU South for the past few years and look forward to publishing my study this fall. But why I'm speaking to you tonight is because as a side project to my academic work, it's a weird side project, admittedly, but I've been totaling the cost of the South Boulder Creek Flood Mitigation Project, Phase 1. And this is because all of the talk about cost has been incredibly confusing to me. In talking to community members over the last few years, I did an extensive journalism project on CU South as well. So I just decided to do it myself. And I stand by the estimate that I emailed to the board that including bond interest, so granted, I get that it might not be done by a bond anymore, the funding, but including, say, a conservative estimate of $12 million for serious bond interest, and then also the over $10 million of waived development fees to CU for their development in exchange for the land. The project will cost over $100 million, and I stand by this, and I'm happy to share my accounting with anyone. I've emailed this work to the city. I've queried the city and spokespeople for explanations multiple times and never received an answer. And then I was segued to this meeting, so that's why I'm speaking here. And it's just bizarre. I'm just genuinely confused. Also, the CFO of Fraser Meadows confirmed with me that they spent $16 million to complete their extensive flood mitigation work, and they're increasing their operational expense to maintain the minimum flood coverage required by FEMA. Now, Fraser Meadows is the retirement community, right? We all know. And this is what the city regularly cites as a key driver for this project, especially in terms of equity. And so I would love some clarity on these costs, because Fraser Meadows just went and spent their own $16 million, and then everyone else has to spend potentially over $100 million for the dam. So I'm just concerned that the city is not being transparent. We must hold our city to basic standards of transparent accounting. So please, board members, I'm asking you to request a third-party review of the accounting and budgeting for this project. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. We do have two more speakers with their hands raised, Lynn Siegel and then Ben B. Ben, if you could please update your last name, that would be great. Or you can put it in the Q&A if you'd like. Lynn, you should be able to unmute.
Yeah, I stand by Ben Binder. He's done exhaustive research on this, and I agree with his upstream detention ponds in multiple places rather than letting things get to the bottom and then having a diversion issue. There's so many places downstream that it's just going to spread out and flood. And if you do an upstream detention, it's just so much more practical. And he's the expert. You know, I'm an ultrasound tech, but I really defer to Ben Binder and the exhaustive work he's put into this over, you know, what, 20 or 30 years or more. And the cost, I can't afford this. You know, with the transportation maintenance fee, with the library district of $300 a year, with the potential DDA, and with the 400 million, or actually it's with the debt limit, 650 million potential ballot measure coming up. This is just unloading CU's problem on the people of Boulder. And you know, we have an affordability crisis in town, and I'm 73 and elder, and I can't, you know, absorb this. I don't spend any money as it is. Everything is saved for climate change for my kids, and I can't have money going out in a detention system that's really inefficient. And I agree completely with Ben Binder. So please carefully review everything he's talking about, and also that other guy, Carl is his first name. He really knows this situation too. And I just appeal to you to not have, you know, this thing that started out at what, 22 million and now 100 million. And CU's tuition rates are going up all the time, and they're building into our town all over the place with rent by the bedroom. You know, I mean, our hotel, the Millennium, was getting, you know, sales tax revenue of 256 rooms, and now we've got 950 rooms that are rented by the bedroom. It's like a hotel. CU is like a resort, and why are we supporting this resort? I mean, we've got Sundance coming too, so it feels like oppressive. And I hope you'll really think about this, and the for the economy of Boulder. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. We do have one more speaker. Ben, if anyone else would like to speak, you can go ahead and virtually raise your hand. I'll keep an eye out for it. Okay, Ben, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
And my name is Ben Binder, B-I-N-D-E-R. Lynn, thanks for the compliments. I've been following this since 1996 when I advised the State Joint Budget Committee that the FEMA floodplain maps for that area were totally incorrect. It's been 30 years now. I can't help but think about a letter that the land commissioner in North Dakota wrote to U.S. Senator Byron Dorgan, talking about me wanting to get me involved in some federal projects. He said, I have a strong public interest in the tenacity of a bulldog when I latch onto an issue. That's why 30 years later, I'm still following this. When the city council first approved this plans for this current, very complex 3-story dam a half a mile away from where floodwaters spill out of South Boulder Creek, it was estimated to cost $23 million. And engineering was supposed to cost $1.9 million. Because of the complexity of the design, the city has spent $14 million on engineering based on invoices I've gotten from the city, 7 times more than originally estimated. And the cost is now additional 76 million for the construction. In 2011, the Boulder City Council adopted capital improvement guiding principles. Have those guiding principles been presented to you? I think it's very important that any approvals of the capital improvement program should meet those guiding principles. And they require a capital programming should maximize efficiency of investments demonstrated by measurable cost-benefit analyses. Have you been presented a cost-benefit and updated cost-benefit analysis for this program? Because the costs are now something like in the order of $90 million, and the benefits were estimated when the project was first approved of being $26.3 million, inflating the cost benefits to the current time, it's about $39 million. So you're going to be spending about, including the engineering, $51 million more for this project. The costs are $51 million more than the benefits of about $39.5 million. So I was wondering if you've looked at those and are in agreement that the city should spend $51 million more for this project than the benefits will accrue to the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I do not currently see anyone else wanting to speak, so I think that concludes open comment.
Okay. Thank you for the public comment. The next agenda item number 4.
Just speak to a couple of things there. Particularly the first speaker who brought up the letters. And I believe what she was talking about is letters related to the floodplain mapping. And anytime we do a project like this, we do analysis and mapping and sending out those letters, which are form letters, part of the process. And so I think Catherine was the name of the speaker, and if you would like to reach out to us directly, we're happy to talk with you about what that letter means. I can assure people that it is not a result of the project that we're designing. And particularly because of the description of where the person lived, it sounds like they're downstream from our project, and the project is going to make things better for everyone. There's a mapping element that's separate, but the South Boulder Creek flood mitigation detention dam will not make things worse for the community members who live downstream. That is one of the narratives that's out there, and it is 100% incorrect. If that was accurate, it's a fundamental of Beaver's approval process, and they would never approve it. So, but we would like to connect with the community members that have questions or concerns about those letters, and I'm happy to meet with you if you're willing to put your contact information in the chat or something like that, or reach out to us from our contact info. I'm happy to talk with you. And then I did want to talk just more broadly to the South Boulder Creek Flood Project and what's coming up with the discussion tonight. And for the capital improvement program, the board's role this evening is to review that program as a whole and our overall rate proposals for each of the 3 utilities. From a process standpoint, I know you heard some comments about potentially better alternatives, and the South Boulder Creek Flood Project alternatives. The related policy decisions have been made and are planned. And so practically the same is true of the funding. Some speakers spoke to that. The project will be moving into the 2nd year of its implementation phase. And one of the speakers mentioned the litigation. I also note that the project is currently under pending litigation. And due to the opponent's legal challenge of the city's funding approach, the city did prevail on the legal issues at the district court level. So the opponents have appealed that as was mentioned. And the court's decision on the appeal is pending. Since the project's funding approach is really at the center of that litigation, those details are probably more appropriately discussed in the legal realm rather than through a Water Resources Advisory Board discussion. And so unless the board has questions related to the public comment or anything I just said, happy to move into the first item and the CIP and the rate presentation of the board.
Okay.
So as we normally do this is the second of 3 meetings on the capital improvement program and rates. And as we normally do in our second meeting on the CIP, we've dedicated the whole meeting agenda to that tonight. We don't really have what we call study sessions with the board, but it's an information item and it's essentially like that. In our first meeting, we did kind of a refresher, and if you recall, we went over all of our systems in the 3 utilities. We talked about the general condition of those systems, how we prioritize, and where the needs are, as well as a general review of the funding with the board. And so tonight we'll be talking about the priority projects that are needing more immediate attention and fall out of that prioritization work, the strategic prioritization work. And I would say the capital improvement program and the recommendation that the board makes to city council is probably the most important thing that the board does every year. And so we'll be having a discussion tonight and we'll be making a recommendation next month. And so hoping to take a deeper dive as we get into more of the projects this time. Really hoping to get your feedback tonight. I know it's always a lot to digest, so would love to get your feedback in this meeting tonight, but board members are also welcome to reach out to us after if you have other questions that come up. And so we want to spend the time tonight. We really want to get your feedback, and then our hope would be to come back in September having hopefully addressed any concerns you have, respond to that feedback, and ask for a recommendation from the board. Our 2 presenters tonight will be Chris Douglas. Chris manages our utilities engineering work group and oversees the team that develops and manages all of these capital improvement projects. It's a huge scope for Chris and his team. And then Steph Klingeman is our principal financial analyst. And she and Chris will be presenting together. I believe Chris is going to start, if I'm not mistaken. And so it looks like the slides are up. And I will turn it over to Chris. And if the camera doesn't work, there is a room camera. So there you go.
Good evening, board members. My name is Chris Douglas. I'm as Joe mentioned, utilities engineering. This is the second of our 3 meetings that we have every year regarding the Utilities Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. And also Steph Klingeman, the Utilities Budget Manager, and I will be sharing for the utility team tonight. And we have additional support with project-specific clarifications if needed with the utilities engineers this evening as well. I'll start the agenda tonight, give an overview of the capital improvement program. I'll transition from our discussion last month. I will then highlight some key projects that will have activity in 2027 and in the later years of the CIP. Steph will then present on the financial impacts of the proposed rate changes. Then we'll have some time for questions and discussions. But as we did last month, please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions as we go along. We'll pause occasionally so we can have some questions. Remember last month, we discussed the condition of our assets. You may remember we used the concept of a traffic light, the green, yellow, red, to differentiate the condition for our major assets in each utility.
We'll get copies.
I'm sorry?
We'll have copies of the slide.
Yes, you will definitely, we will be getting copies of the slide deck. It's a part of the minutes. So, source water projects, as shown here in these photos, deal with water before it enters the water treatment plants. And highlighting a few projects is The Barker Gravity Line project is an annual project that the city has been working on rehabilitating since 2017. We spend approximately $5 million per year on this project. The work will continue in 2027 and anticipated completion in 2029. Boulder Canyon Hydro Penstock project pictured here is a key source water delivery pipeline to the Picasso Water Treatment Plant. Pipeline's over 100 years old, has pressure sitting up to 800 PSI. We will complete an evaluation of the pipeline in 2027 with rehabilitation plan for 2029. Building on the previous work, we're conducting a new study in 2027 to further characterize the risks associated with Barker Dam. In the previous table, this is the largest single reservoir that the city has. This study will identify information, data gaps to help inform further explorations and studies of the dam. This information will then inform the scope of rehabilitation of the dam. This project will be ongoing for the next 5 to 6 years until an appropriate defined solution is found. Additionally, in 2027, we are performing a risk assessment on all the high and significant hazard dams portfolio. This will help build a roadmap on the extent of projects needed to reduce the risk and improve the safety of our dam facilities in future years this year. Now we're going to move into projects in the treated water system. The Iris and Cherryville pump stations rehabilitation project bolsters the ability to move water from east to west in the system. Approximately 30% of Boulder's water is produced at the Boulder Reservoir Water Treatment Plant on the east side of the city. The Iris and Cherryville project is the next step after completion of the 2025 high service pump station project at the treatment plant. This project also addresses power outage redundancy by installing backup generators and will enable operational reliability when other projects are completed in the treated water system. The project is currently under design and planning to start construction in 2027. There are 2 new projects planned for the transmission main program. This program replaces the large diameter pipelines in the treated water system. These are the Broadway Table Mesa to Baseline pipeline shown in blue, and the Kohler to Broadway pipelines shown in peach. Kohler to Broadway pipeline is planned to bid later this year, with construction to start in 2027. The section of pipeline conveys 30% of the water in the Boulder system. The project will upgrade 2 pipelines with 2 new pipelines in that system. Broadway pipeline will continue design in 2027 with construction planned for 2028. Highlighted some of the water projects that have activity in 2027. Additional significant projects in the water system for 2027 are listed here. These are projects, generally speaking, that have over $500,000 of funding in 2027. They're a combination of individual projects and programs. These projects and programs are the items that RAG will be asked to make a recommendation to City Council on this account. So now, before we move into wastewater projects, we want to again take a pause to see if there's any questions or anything about these other projects that we didn't discuss this
Can I add to what you just said?
evening. Absolutely.
Not a question. And I know you weren't prompting me to speak, but just to elaborate on this a little bit about the mechanics of the budget process. We show the board a 6-year CIP so that you kind of have context of what else is coming and what's on the docket for us. But it's really in each year's budget process, the next calendar year, that city council, when it gets to the end of the process, they approve the 2027 budget,
Right.
not the future years. So Chris, you may have said that, but I wanted to make sure.
Sorry. So that, and you could address this later. Right, we have the projections. So
Mhm.
the projections for the current year, what we're supposed to approve that we got last year, were there any significant changes? Last year to this year in terms of what was projected?
And I would want to double check, but where I'm thinking right now is there are no significant changes. But again, we're still on track to fund and advance those projects. And you might even remember from last month's board packet, we presented the 2026 CIP. There's a couple of different highlighted areas in red. Those were actually projects that went into the budget, but were changes between second meeting and third meeting. And we're doing the same thing as well as you'll see in the packet for next month. If we are making suggestions, we always are making adjustments. Well, note that.
So anyone, all those items are rather.
Yeah.
It's changed from the last month to this month.
Yes.
Thank you. Question I had.
Now we're going to discuss some 2027 projects in the wastewater system. Wastewater strategic plan will integrate the work being completed in its collection system and at the water resource recovery facility. This plan will allow staff to review and prioritize the many projects in the wastewater system. It will also provide a methodology to compare and contrast the diverse projects in the entire wastewater system. The plan will also prepare a forward-looking tool to enhance our current project prioritization project future use, CIP.
When's the last time you did a strategic plan?
The last one was 2016. So it has been a while, and actually you have a lovely segue with that question, because this Arapahoe Road Pipeline project is the last of the significant work that was identified in that 2016 plan. And so the project addresses corrosion in the pipe and increases the hydraulic capacity of the pipeline by either increasing the size of the pipe in Arapahoe Road, and that's the existing line in red, or we're looking at an alternative to put in a relief sewer or an additional sewer line to handle those flows. And one of the concepts there is we will be addressed our design in 2027 and looking to start construction in 2020. So then at the water resource recovery facility, we're finishing up the HVAC system upgrades, which included heating, ventilation, and air conditioning at building campuses and also as a hot water. So the project began in 2027 and with mechanical operations and being installed now, and began in 26 and will be installed. We're installing now through 2026. And then also another project is the secondary clarifier shown in red. Began in 2026 with ordering of materials, but the mechanical equipment that we've ordered will be installed. The digester complex shown in yellow will continue design in 2027. The digester complex uses anaerobic bacteria, think without oxygen, to break down sewage, sludge at the water resource recovery facility. This process reduces the waste volume, kills harmful pathogens, produces methane rich biogas for energy, and creates nutrient rich biosolids used as fertilizer. Current roofing system does not allow for efficient collection of biogas, which the city collects and sells to local customers. A new fixed cover will be installed that will allow the city to collect the biogas for sale and reduce the methane emissions at the water resource recovery facility and rehabilitate that aging roof asset.
What does the roof have to do?
The roof, the design of the roof with a solid roof, it basically, all of the vapors collect underneath the roof, right, pull them off. Whereas right now it has what they call a floating roof. So think there is a wiper or barrier around the edges, but it's easier for that methane gas to escape out of the gas. So it really, this is one of those ones, it's a project where we look at, okay, the roof is getting past its useful life. What can we do? We need a new roof. So now it's the, oh, well, if we do the fixture, it also helps with our environment.
Cool. Okay. Great.
So that's another version of how we look at those multiple benefits of projects. And then we discussed the ongoing sewer rehabilitation project last month. The work will continue in 2027. We spend approximately $5 million a year to continue this program. The photos show the process, the progress we are making in the lining of the lining program by the increased amount of green pipes, lower picture titled Restore Pipe Age. Restore Pipe Age. Of note is the graph on the left. It shows the aggressive increase in pipelining following the city council's desire to accelerate the program in 2015. We're currently on track to complete the lining program in 2035. Now I'm going to highlight some of the wastewater projects that have activity in 2027. Additional significant projects for 2027 are listed in this slide. And again, it's that around the 500,000 or more dollar amount. And it's a combination of projects and programs. These projects and programs are the items that RAB will be asked to make a recommendation on this. Maybe before moving on to the storm and flood program, maybe pause, see if there's any other questions related to the wastewater program. Now I'm going to discuss some of the key projects for 2027 in stormwater and flood management system. These projects are needed to help manage the stormwater and flood events. The first project is the South Boulder Creek project. This flood project includes an earthen embankment dam, concrete spillway wall for overflows, outlet works under US 36, connects back to South Boulder Creek. We're currently under contract to begin construction and finalizing the last parts of this project.
How many, from the memo we got, there's like one more permit? Do you have more than?
The FEMA permit is
Yeah.
the last one, and we're expecting that any day.
Permit.
The Gregory Canyon Creek Phase 1 flood project will continue design in 2027. Phase 1 project shown in this slide conveys the 25-year storm event from Pennsylvania Avenue to the confluence with Boulder Creek. The project includes channel improvements and road crossing widening. We're in the final stages of easement acquisition, and the construction is anticipated to begin in 2028.
So is that conveying underground or above ground? Or both?
It's generally an open channel, but there are a few sections of underground, particularly around road crossings. The Upper Goose Creek and Flood Stormwater Project will continue design in 2027. The project addresses localized flooding from smaller seasonal storms like those shown in the photo from North Boulder Park in 2023. The project will also improve flood conveyance system for larger storms in the Goose Creek drainage basin. Construction for the project is anticipated to begin in 2028 and can extend into 2029.
So I'm noticing a lot of construction regarding Goose Creek with the associated with the office building. That's separate from
That is
obviously part of the same system.
That is separate. That the flood channel construction in conjunction with that office project is one of the reaches or sections of flood channel that needed to be addressed. But we're looking at the Goose Creek project addressing a flood channel that is further downstream of the task. Correct. And the intent is to connect this downstream project we're talking about here back to the Alpine Balsam project that you saw within the office building expansion. So that was a particular project that took advantage of the timing of construction of the office building to get those flood improvements.
Okay. Looks kind of interesting. Looks cool. So
And there was some local opposition. You've sort of come to terms with those folks?
There is local opposition to the project. We're reaching out to those folks because right now we're still in the data gathering phase. So we are coordinating with those folks to be doing to do the data gathering on the flood project. And then there will be that continued negotiation as we know more and move into the more final designs.
Chris, I might add to that, those community members who are along with withdrawing made a request of the city. They had 6 things that they were looking for, if I remember correctly. And the good news is that we're able to accommodate all 6 of the things we were asking.
Just because I'm asking in part because the signs are all still up.
I think, there's a channel behind that has mature trees or understandably concerned about what's gonna happen. Is the city gonna come in and put in some big ugly concrete channel? And we're not. It'll be very natural looking, but I don't think it would be fair of us to say those people have turned into supporters. I think they still have ongoing concerns, but we're working with them as Chris mentioned.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I've held some of the stormwater and flood management projects that have activity in 27. Additional significant projects in storm and flood management system are listed here. And again, following that same $500,000 criteria, and then RAB will ask RAB to make a recommendation to City Council in September. And then maybe it's just pause if there's any other storm and flood water management questions at this point.
Just curious. People ask me, how do you set priorities for these projects? Based on risk, cost, all of that?
It is in the storm and flood system, it is a combination of things. Those are involved. Also in that 2022 comprehensive storm plan that talked about. We're also accounting for social economic factors. And trying to.
So it's not just the wealthiest properties.
It is not just the wealth, and that was something definitely very conscious that we went through. How do we make sure we're applying equity across all of the projects? So that was even earlier today where we've broken up those projects into those individual reaches. That was all categorized based on those 7 criteria.
So I'm curious, are there some projects that you might have included? They might not have shown up into the financial risk, but because of equity concerns, they were elevated.
And that has moved things around. Yes.
Anything else out here at any point? I'm just curious.
Off the top of my head,
Let's get back to it.
Yes, let me look at it.
I can respond to you during this meeting.
All right, that's fine.
At the bare minimum, maybe Joel, that is something there that we can come back
Yes, okay.
and revisit that analysis for you, because I know we've got that data, but we can bring that back.
Yeah, in fact, during public comment, you heard some concerns about benefit cost ratio.
Right.
One of the things in my tenure here at the city that I'm proud of the team's work is this new prioritization criteria. And flood projects in the FEMA process, historically, you just look at benefit cost ratio. And so if you think about a flood project, the benefit is the avoided damages if you build the project. And so that points all the projects to the most affluent parts of the city. And so that's honestly what motivated us to take another look at that. And it has made a difference. It's been a couple of years, so I'm not remembering off the top of my head, but.
You should see.
Or one of the other.
Yeah,
and we can come back to that, or one of the other factors that we accounted for was additional city benefit of the project. So, and I'm gonna jump into that. That's an additional city benefit is Primrose Park, which is shown here in this sketch, is the concept design of Primrose Park, which is off of Violet and 19th.
Yeah.
So it is a major flood reach, but we're actually designing that in conjunction with the Parks Department and creating, there's the park aid in that part of the community as well. So we were able to advance that project because we had that added community benefit.
Moves it up the list.
Correct.
Doesn't the city also have ways of surfacing projects that might not immediately appear to the city through, like points of contact, people who are out in community speaking with different neighborhoods and I'm trying to remember the name of the neighborhood.
Connectors and residents.
Community connectors, right, yeah, so like you might have people with valuable properties that are falling all the time, but maybe you're missing some of the folks that don't feel it as the title. So there are ways that you try to surface those types of projects. Your alternative.
For sure. And I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Joanna Bloom and I'm Deputy Director of Utilities. And yes, we frequently use the Community Connector and Residents Group. They kind of have a standing group. It's similar to a board where we can go and try run projects by them. But also we had 2 resident community connectors on the community working group when we went through the comprehensive flood and stormwater update. And so they were kind of close advisors throughout the whole process and they approved the plan before it went to council and got approved. So we try to look through that pretty lens whenever we can.
The city's overarching racial equity plan gives us a set of tools and things that we can employ, like the community connectors or an instrument that we can apply to projects to make sure we're looking at it through that lens and not leaving people out of the discussion.
So I'm just trying to figure out where Primos Park is on it's next to the fire station? Is that where it's gonna be?
No.
Violet and 19.
Yeah, maybe Violet and 19.
And then it's
By Boulder Meadows Manufactured Housing.
Yeah, so it's where like the tennis court is for them?
No, it's actually not in the manufactured housing community.
Okay.
It's just adjacent to the west of the intersection of Violet and 19. So, and actually as a part of this, as we're coordinating with other departments, we're also working with the transportation department as they're replacing the bridge that crosses Violet
Yeah.
in that drainage area. That's one of their priority projects. So it's actually a transportation, parks, utilities joint project that we're all.
So it's
working
right, it'll be right behind where the trailers are.
Yes, yeah, just to the south.
Yeah, okay, sorry, rider bikes do that intersection all the time.
If you've ever ridden up 19, you're
Yeah.
probably well aware you get to a bridge and all of a sudden the bike lane disappears.
Right.
And the road gets really skinny and then you cross the bridge and the
Okay.
bike lane's there again. So this joint project will address that issue.
Okay, all right. Cool, thank you.
And to put that in context, it's Crestview Elementary School.
Yeah.
That's further south on.
Yeah, right.
That bridge project that was just completed was another joint project between utilities and transportation. And so the bridge going on in Violet is going to be something similar to that in Crestview.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me? This is Catherine.
Yes.
Great. Quick question for you. Just looking at the different project lists in the packet that you sent under the Stormwater Fund, I just noticed that there's the consistent funding for a couple different projects like that are just listed as local drainage improvements, stormwater quality improvements, storm sewer rehabilitation. Can you speak to just what that funding generally goes to year over year and the maintenance maybe
Or
that those are for?
storm sewer rehabilitation, that's part of our annual videoing and what's going on in the storm sewers. We're taking a look and we have issues, which leads to then projects that are either handled in the rehabilitation or really on the local drainage projects. For instance, it could be a specific project. For instance, the one that I'm thinking in my head that we just completed this year is we actually did a local drainage project on Canyon, just west of Broadway. And that one where we rehabilitated that storm sewer that went underneath Canyon Boulevard. Or we also do projects like the rain garden by the post office downtown at Walnut and 15, thank you. But it's more on those smaller scale things as we, a lot of times as we look at the rehabilitation program, we can identify, oh, we need some improvements in this area. We can go ahead and address that. And it's maintaining and having that, I'll call it the reserve funding for those things that come up versus just super big projects.
And if you recall last month when, and you might have shared a slide here, Chris, but last month when we talked about the systems for Catherine's question, there is a network of stormwater pipes that collects water off of streets across the city. It's not as complete as some of the other pipe systems, but the smaller projects are just prioritizing elements of that system that need attention based on video inspection and stuff like Chris was talking about.
And we do have a stormwater master plan that addresses both the local and collector stormwater pipes. That's also something that we're working on as a part of this program.
Can you remind me what frequency vents are they designed for?
The stormwater system in residential is generally for a 2-year storm. In a commercial area is that 5-year storm. So that is that normal seasonal heavy rain that you get. So that, and if you go back to that North Brother Park picture, that was in the realm of about a 5-year. I can go back, this was in that area was in the realm of a 5-year storm. Okay. That caused the 5-year storm process. That caused that backup in that area. And that's
there.
Exactly. And that's where we're trying to address those things that come up.
And that one will be a combination of increased capacity in stormwater pipes in that area that will then convey it to the flood reaches and drop that water off there, and the improved channel conditions in the Goose Creek flood.
So
it'll all work together.
for the water system, there's the index that, so there's very good sense of what the asset base is. You're tracking very up to a very high degree when and where you should be making improvements. You mentioned that in the wastewater system, you're building that kind of asset awareness for the reinvestment and replacement. For the stormwater, we went through this big stormwater master planning effort. We have the flood mapping. We're talking about smaller drainages. Is there an intent to develop sort of or is there a more regular system of condition assessment for the drainages where we have an every 5-year new better data set to prioritize those kind of projects?
I don't want to jump in front of Chris and others here, but yeah, I would say our intent in utilities, we do a decent job of prioritizing across all 3 utilities that way. There's a little bit of variation though in the level of sophistication for each one and where we're at. And one of the things that I'm really focused on with the team and trying to drive forward is our overall asset management program and really upping our level of sophistication with all of those condition assessments, using GIS, using the various tools, and having the funding decisions tied to that. We're doing that now, but it's more manual and it's not entirely consistent across all 3 utilities. So Chris, you can elaborate on that.
And certainly, I think that's the intent, is to get there. That's a part of where we talked about the condition assessment, the stormwater, the smaller storms, the storm pipes you see in the neighborhoods, is that collection of that data to understand where year 4 of what I believe is an 8-year program to video and inventory the system. So that's helping our maintenance program a lot, but then it's also leading towards projects. But do we have that full numerical calculation method in the storm and flood program? No. And we're working towards it.
In the return on investment, right? there's so much more data available and so many more tools to be collecting it. But still probably there's a cost benefit analysis for how much time and energy you're spending going out and assessing small drainages when people can just tell you, every time I ride my bike here and it's raining, it's flooded. But, you know, there's, so maybe there's an inflection point where it makes
That's
sense.
certainly a factor, and the other part of it is the drainage channels themselves are, it's a little different approach method to how you do that analysis. Actually gone through and done an inventory of the drainages and what work needs done. We're actually in collaboration with Mile High Flood District and our own internal staffing on addressing those maintenance and or capital maintenance risks. So I think the system is maturing, but it's going to be a little further out before we can come in. And I don't even know if the industry has necessarily the best tool in the flood and drainage channel to say, here's your number, let's go do this project first. There is a little more subjectiveness to that type of information. So we're trying to pull that together, but it is definitely slower.
So get in the data. And we've been talking about the more frequent events. Figure about flip side, what about the less frequent higher consequence events, sort of 25, 50, 100? And what about, I mean, these obviously building for those is bound to be a challenge, but at least considering what implications it would have, what could be done, or what actions might be needed, evacuation, that kind of thing.
And that is certainly a big component that when we did the comprehensive short flood plan it wasn't just capital projects, it was that what's our early warning systems, how do we communicate to the community so that they can react appropriately, because we know we've got a very long construction window within the flood management.
So I want to ask a broader question. It's come up more because of what events in the city. Go to some of the city buildings and now recognizing that they have a $400 million bond because of deferred maintenance. My sense is, having been in the board 2 years, that utilities was pretty careful about looking at maintenance issues across the board and not deferring things and suddenly, oh, guess what? We have some big issues. Can you reassure me, though, that is the case, that we're not deferring? I mean, I'm gonna come at this. South Boulder, right? It just is that it's a big issue in terms of the city. I'd like to look at in terms of water utilities.
Yeah, and we'll get into it here. Staff is going to cover the funding part, but I know there are concerns from the community, and we have our own concerns about how we navigate all of this work that we have to do and keep utility costs reasonably affordable. I would say the condition assessments that you see and the work that we've been doing, we're kind of stabilizing things so that the overall condition of the system isn't dropping as much as it was. But we're not necessarily gaining ground with the funding. That we're doing. Yeah. And I feel like the people who were in these positions generations before us really need to be credited for the systems that they brought to bear for the city and the community. Some of you probably have heard me say this before. The condition of those facilities is not great in all cases. There's one component of our source water pipeline system that's still 100 years old. It sees 800 PSI pressure that broke across the penstock. So my own vision and the driving I'm doing with our department is it's on our current generation of staff to leave those systems better than we found it. And that's what we're trying to do and gain ground. Some of the stuff that we inherited was not in great shape. When we purchased the Barker system from Excel, there are things there that have lots of deferred maintenance. And so we're trying to catch up.
And we also, I mean, sometimes I look at the long list of planning initiatives in the CIP and I sort of go, oh gosh, the planners, but there's what are we doing in the immediate, these small repairs and minor capital improvements, but then periodically there's let's get to 50,000 feet, let's think about it. So we had the stormwater master plan, the water conservation plan. Now there's an effort to get the integrated water resource plan done, right? So we're like getting into the nitty gritty of the asset management, but we're also taking a step back and thinking bigger picture, what is climate change going to look like for the city in 50 years? And how does that make us rethink about what we're prioritizing, what we're doing here and now? So I don't see that plan. So maybe I just didn't slide it.
100% though, and you recall in the last year or so, the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan team has come and talked to the board a number of times, and that plan is on the 1 yard line for approval. But that gets into the planning metrics and future growth, and we do think about climate change and some of those other things in the city's history. And if you ever talk to Chris Meschuk, who's our deputy city manager, he is a history buff and can tell you so many cool things about the evolution of our city. I know in the wastewater system, there was a period of time where we weren't looking far enough ahead, probably back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And we would get done with one major upgrade to the treatment plant or the system, and it was already too small. And they would have to, so for a long time, we've really invested in the capacity and we have it there, but we're now getting to that point where we need to be doing those looks. Yeah. And we are doing that.
So to Amy's question about an IRP, will that now, once the comprehensive plan is done for the whole city, then is that the appropriate time to start an IRP?
Yep, that is next, and it'll be in 2027.
Okay, all right. And now then the question there is, I think it was funded in 2026, so you wouldn't see it in the 2027 plan. But I will re-verify that, and particularly in that IRP, because that is our intent, is to work on that next year.
Technically, I think the funding starts in Q4 of this year, so it probably is flagged. It was last year when we had these discussions, but the bulk of that project and the process is going to happen in 2027, or I think even 28. That'll be a really good one for the board to follow along and contribute to.
Yes.
I think it's on to me. Steph Klingeman, budget analyst for utilities. So today I'll be covering some key financial topics under financial matters for our 3 utility enterprise funds. And the goal here is really to provide a clear picture for how we manage the department's resources, plan for future needs, and ensure the long-term financial health of the department.
Right for the next one too.
Oh, no. Thanks. So these are our core utility funding sources. They are our most stable source of revenue really comes from our user fees, and those are the monthly rates that are charged to customers for utility services. Municipal bonding allows us to finance large projects now and repay the cost over time, and we typically bond over a 20-year term. And then we also receive grants and low interest loans from the state and federal programs from time to time, and that can help reduce cost. But those funds are quite competitive. They're not always available, and they require projects to meet specific criteria. And then this is a list of some supplemental utility revenues that we receive. So if you're looking through the attachment schedules, there should be individual line items for these items. Our plant investment fees, also known as our PIF fees, those are one-time fees charged to new development, and those can vary year over year. We also sell biogas and hydropower, and that helps diversify our income and support some of our sustainability goals.
And then other miscellaneous revenues might include water lease sales, some miscellaneous service charges like meter install fees or late payments. And then also wanted to call out interest earned because that can also be high in some years. And I also just wanted to mention that to remain an enterprise fund under Tabor, no more than 10% of our revenue can come from government sources. So that would include grants or interfund transfers. And we do meet this criteria quite easily because the vast majority of our revenue is generated through user fees. So these are the proposed rate increases for 2027. We're proposing a 5% rate increase for our water fees and then a 7% increase in our wastewater and stormwater fees. I will mention that this is a slight reduction from last year's recommendations. I don't know if you recall from the last meeting, but we actually had proposed an 8% in water, 8% in wastewater, and a 7% in stormwater and flood. We decided to reduce the rate increases for water and wastewater for a couple of reasons. There are some, financial strains in the community that we recognize. And then we also do recognize that we need to spend some of our balance down in our water fund as well. So we feel comfortable with the 5% water rate increase for this year. Looking ahead, we are projecting, 8% rate increases again in the water fund for 28 and 29, and then stabilizing the wastewater and stormwater and flood fees at about 7%. Oh, yeah, we can
Okay.
discuss it now.
So I've, remember last year I had raised the issue. And if I remember, I went and I backed, I looked at the CIP from last year. I think your projected for this year, I think it was 6, 8, and 8. Is that right? I got to go back and check, but that's I think it was a lot higher. Yeah,
It was higher, correct? Yeah, the storm.
Higher. So I applaud on utilities for doing this because I raised the concern, pointing out that this was double the rate of inflation, certainly much higher than income growth, and also just compounding, 7% a year, you double in 10 years. And so those projected rates will still double in less than 10 years. And then we did get the letter from our attorneys, which I thought was articulate. I just appreciate Joe's response on that. So yeah, I think that first, I think it's good. I appreciate that you're trying to hold it. I mean, on the one hand, is us to make sure we're not deferring things. On the other hand, though, we hear from Lynn just about every month about this. We hear others, Eric, this concern. So I think we do have to try to do what we can. That said, you have to think about this is water, right? We have to have a secure, reliable, safe water supply. If it fails, that's a catastrophe, right? So it's not like, well, we can let it go or put up with some delays. I mean, I understand. And I think in your response to Eric, you pointed out that delays can result in more costs. I think delays, correct me if I'm wrong, also result in more risk to the system, right?
Very much.
Absolutely, and talk about that. Yeah, so that's, I think about that overall. Yes, I come down that we have to, you want a reliable system, and talk about upsetting everybody if we have a boil water notice or something, some other call. Obviously, we know what happened in 2013 flooding. But I think then that still leaves the question of affordability. And it is addressed to some extent. I just would like to request at some point that we have, future, maybe we dive into this more in depth to see, what are the options to help out people who really are struggling with their bills, whatever it may be. What are we allowed to do on the table? And I know some ideas being kicked around, but maybe to spend more time in depth on that. I don't think doing review of the CIP, it's not enough. But if others disagree, I'll defer to the Ryan numbers, but too. But we're now raising this 2 years in a row, and I think it's still, even with these lower rates, it's still, an issue. But this is an improvement. So good. We're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
We've talked definitely about customer assistance programs and what resources Boulder residents have if it is a real strain on them to pay their utility bills. And the information is very much available on the website, and you can call and get more detail if you need it. But are we committed as a city to continuing to fund that customer assistance program? And
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of us who could speak to that, but I think Joel really appreciate that feedback. We're aligned with the board on that. We're concerned about affordability. And I think it's important to have a safety net for people who are struggling to pay their bills. As an enterprise fund, the legalities of it are a major constraint because we can't just take revenue and create a pool of money from the users' fees and redistribute it to others such that one set of users is subsidizing and others. That we can't do that in utilities. And I've talked to my peer directors and neighboring communities. And so there are some cities who take this a lot further, and it's a big work plan item. We've been working on it for a few years now, and we're trying to bring something to fruition. But the cities that really have good programs and meaningful support directly from utilities, they have a dedicated staff member who work on that program and implement that program. And so we're assessing, and you've probably seen things that you pay for on various bills where you can click a box and have a roundup. Like, are you willing to round up and make a donation to people? We're looking at those types of things, but it continues to be a priority in our work plan, but because of the constraints we have on our fund, it's not easy to bring it forward.
So which cities are exemplary?
Longmont has I'd say Longmont and Aurora have some pretty comprehensive programs. And they have dedicated staff, as Joe mentioned, but it's still not without complications.
Sure.
And as Joe mentioned, we right now are really trying to identify that funding source that we can establish a program with. And feel free to hop in here, Joanna, because we've talked to several communities at this point. I think the way that we're envisioning it, and hopefully we'll get rolling with it a little bit more next year, but maybe starting it off as a pilot program just to see how the verification process works, because that's a lot of work, and there are a lot of sensitive documentation that's involved with that. We're also still talking with HHS, Housing and Human Services, to try and create this like comprehensive umbrella program, because right now we do, directs
Federal HHS?
No.
I'm sorry, you're HHS.
Our city department.
So yeah, we are exploring different things right now, but it's really just we're trying to hone in on that big funding source. We do think that we'll get some money from a Roundup program, but the expectation that is that funding pool will probably be pretty small, and we'll need to enhance it more.
And there currently are programs through the county, through our housing department. There's not nothing for people who need help, but I don't know, with what we're talking about here and the needs and how we're gonna have to fund this, it just feels better if we have something that meets the legal requirements, that is more directly administered set up by utilities, might actually be better administered through our housing department rather than us who know about pipes.
Yeah, we had Live Heat as the county managed heating, electricity subsidy, and then there was a Live Walk that came from IIJA, but I think that's expired. That was for water, that was help fund water. Live Heat was fed.
Right.
Yeah, those are several programs.
So that also plays into the cap on the enterprise fund. Although it's probably small, right?
Yeah, the program was administered by the county, and so you as a resident could go and submit your information to the county. They could verify and provide you with some subsidy for your.
So that wouldn't count towards the 10% enterprise non-cap. If people are,
I think it's
because it's going to a
right.
resident.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
It wouldn't, and honestly, that the types of program, even if it came through utilities, I don't think that would trigger that type of concern for us. But I think the part of the request, could we do an information item or something like that on the bill assistance program in the future as we continue to work on that? I think for sure. we could do that.
And also maybe even review, like, let's write some of the numbers. How many people were requesting assistance? How much are they getting? Is it making that? That'd be great.
Of course. I put together just a few slides on some bill impacts. We did include a few in the packet, but these are some more bill impact examples. So the first one is the increase to the average single family residential bill. We're looking at about a $9 increase in the monthly rate, which is about a 6.1% increase. And just to kind of set us, this is for about 90,000 gallons for the entire year, with a water budget of around 12,000 gallons. We need to get into the rates we can, but this is a typical single family residential bill. So the next slide shows the bill impact to the duplex. Annual consumptions around 128,000 gallons per year, and we're showing about a $12 increase to the monthly rate. This little example shows a large apartment complex, which is a commercial bill impact for a 4-inch meter. This is showing about a 6.2% increase, so total increase of about $515 a month. And then this is an example for a restaurant with a 1.5-inch meter, showing about a $400 increase in the monthly bill. Overall percentage increase of about 5.7%. Any questions on those bill impacts?
Now, I'll just point out, I think Eric Burns, I just did some math. I mean, he mentioned about an 8% increase. I forgot. I think he said it was the last 16 years. So to see
that come down
6%. That's it's better than 8.
I'll just mention, we don't have a perfect index to measure our water and sewer utilities against. I think our best proxy is the construction cost index and the building cost index.
Yeah.
And so we look at what that is trending or how that is trending for the Denver Metro. And over the last year and over the last several years, it's been between, 4 and 6%. And so year over year, we're at about 5.5%. So it's just another little metric that we look at.
Higher than just general inflation.
Right. Yeah. Water utilities in general raise rates. Probably double the rate inflates, but it's not. Boulder's not.
Well, and to your point, Joel,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if you've been following the news for the last couple of years, just in Colorado, there have been cities on the Front Range who have had to do, if I'm remembering correctly, 80% rate increases. Wow. And some of the smaller cities have been on the verge of failure because their systems got so far behind. And
Never mind the fact they're getting hacked by Iran.
yeah, we'll talk about that on the
Yeah.
It's another time.
So I put together just a few slides showing our historical rate increases, and I know it's a little small. We'll provide this after the meeting. The numbers that are sort of above the arrows, those just show bond issues and the amounts of those bond issues. So these bonds for the water fund have typically been in the $30 million range, and our next bond payoff is scheduled for 2036. The next slide shows our historical rate increases for our wastewater fund, and as you can see, we have issued bonds more frequently for this fund. Historically, I would say that rate increases have aligned a little bit more with that BCI CCI index that I was just talking about. It's been about 5.5% annually over the last 10 years. But you can kind of see that those rate increases are ticking it up a little bit. We've got some projected 7% rate increases for next year, and so we can talk a little bit more about that. I'll just mention that our 2006 bond matures this year. So you have a bond rolling off this year.
One of the, during the public comment section, one of the people raised the issue about the costs of South Boulder Creek affecting rates, but that's already factored in. Right?
That's factored in, and looking at an alternative funding approach, we were mindful of the rate projections we made last year, and we had to rearrange things to be able to stay at the 7% rate proposal that we had the prior year, and do that without the bond funding. That for sure has caused pain, and that fund is now constrained, and the projects in the out years, we really need that bonding capability to come back for us, or we and other utilities like us have a huge problem.
And this is the stormwater rate increase slide. So currently the stormwater and flood fund only has one outstanding issuance. And between 2021 and 2024, you can see that steeper rate increases were imposed to strengthen our financial position. Going forward, we project more moderate and annual rate increases for this fund, ranging between that 5% and 7%. So next, I just wanted to describe the purpose of our reserve funds and how they're used to support the utility. Reserves provide a financial buffer that allows us to manage unexpected costs and stabilize revenue fluctuations, which is especially true in the water fund, where these revenues can vary depending on weather. We have three primary reserves across 3 utilities. Our operating reserve is set at 25% of operating expenses, and that covers our day-to-day costs if revenues fall short unexpectedly. The Water Resiliency Reserve is a financial tool that helps protect the water fund when revenue is lower than anticipated due to abnormal weather conditions or other unexpected factors like COVID. This reserve is targeted at 10% of customer revenue. And then finally, we have our capital reserves, and those are set aside for any unexpected or emergency projects. We do plan to gradually increase those reserve fund amounts in our wastewater and stormwater programs. And I thought it might be helpful to walk through this fund financial example. This one relates back to Schedule 3 of your packet. I know these numbers are a little hard to see, but hopefully the general concepts here are pretty easy to follow. So if you did want to flip over to Schedule 3, feel free to. But we'll maybe start with the 2025 actuals column, since that's been expended and those numbers are unaudited, but in the process of being audited. So we start with our beginning fund balance, and then we add our revenues, subtract our expenses. So in that example, we're starting with a fund balance of about $55 million, adding about $34 million in revenue, and then subtracting out the $45 million in expenses. This very basic math equation gives us the fund balance before reserves. And then towards the bottom of that page, you'll see where we subtract off of the reserves that I just walked through, and those are again set aside to manage our financial risk. And the result is the ending fund balance, which we aim to keep positive. In our wastewater fund projections, you can see that our ending fund balance is expected to decline, and that's primarily due to the advancement of several major capital projects. The decline is expected and not a concern since we're still able to meet our capital needs and our reserve targets.
Is there an industry standard as to what level that fund balance should be, percentage of expenditures or whatever?
So I have a couple other slides that speak to different metrics, but fund balance is really, you really don't want to go below that $0. You want to make sure that you're setting enough money aside in those reserve funds, and those reserve funds should really be, fully capturing what we need to set aside for any unexpected financial risk. So I would say so long as those numbers really aren't dipping so far below 0, we should be fine.
Really, I mean, the way you're just talking about this strikes me, they probably want to have some reasonably positive number, not just 0.
No, like the operating reserve is 90 days cash on hand, right? So it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
making sure that you have enough money in the bank to run without any revenues whatsoever for 90 days.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have the operating reserve, we have an emergency capital reserve that should again be able to, in theory, account for some
some risk there if we have an emergency capital project, which we did have last year.
Which one was that?
It was the Foothills Sewer Line Project. So
We discovered a line under Foothills Parkway that needed to be replaced.
Oh, wow.
And so we were able to dip into the reserves and complete that project in a very timely manner.
And how much was that?
Thinking was around $1 million. So
yeah. And then
Okay.
And then again, the resiliency reserve, which was added a few years back, maybe 5 years now, I think that was introduced right after COVID. It was acknowledged that was a real need for the utility. So you really don't want those numbers to be so inflated, because that would mean if you had an ending fund balance that was really high, that would mean it's not spending down, money for capital projects. So we're comfortable keeping it, a little bit above zero. And you can see that there. Right.
That emergency reserve was something I wanted, and I kind of headed that up because I just saw what happened to the other forms of revenue in the city during COVID and tax revenue. And we don't have the same financial triggers as other general fund departments, but like in this year with the drought year,
Yeah.
if we really ratcheted down restrictions and our revenue was way less, we have to have a plan for that. And kind of no way to run a business without having a plan. And so having that reserve for things like that was important to me.
And then hopefully this also kind of helps round out your question. So there are, I have a couple slides here that highlight some other key financial metrics that are used to evaluate a utility's financial health. Often these metrics are considered when we go before a ratings agency like S&P prior to a bond sale. So the first one I just wanted to touch on was our days cash on hand, which shows how many days a utility can cover its operating expenses using its available cash reserves and fund balance. This is effectively a liquidity measure. And as Amy mentioned, we have that reserve, that 90-day reserve, and you can see here that between the industry minimum of 90 days and then the S&P, what they typically would give for a strong rating, which is 150 days, we're pretty well above those ranges up until about 2030, where we're still staying right at that minimum. So I would say that being above the target isn't necessarily the goal, but we do want to maintain enough cash to be financially resilient while also using available cash to fund planned projects and make investments in our future infrastructure.
So you don't see a red, I'm not a financial expert, you don't see a red or yellow flag, the fact that we're just at the 90-day minimum on wastewater.
In 2030?
In 2029 through 31.
Yeah, we will build that up back over time after a few years. And so I would say that we're comfortable at that level. And again, this shows sort of the year-end estimate. So then this assumes that we're spending down all of our capital. And as I talked about in our prior meeting, we don't necessarily spend all that money down all at one time. We typically encumber funds up front, but projects can take several years. So we likely won't hit that industry minimum in 2029. It'll probably stay hovered between the minimum and then that strong rating. But yes, we are expected to be at that 90 days cash on hand at some point in the next 6-year window. And we're leveraging our ability to bond in 2028, 2029. We're still sort of in and above that range. And then this last slide that I just wanted to cover is another financial metric that we look at and consider. It's the debt service coverage ratio, or the DSCR. And it's a way to measure how well the utility can cover its debt payments. So a higher DSCR just means that the utility is in a stronger position to meet its debt obligations. And you can see each of the DSCRs for each utility graphed on the screen, along with the industry minimum of 1.25 times. And then again, S&P's benchmark of 2 times for a strong rating. Sure.
What's going on with stormwater that just, I'm just hearing great shape for that just come.
Right, so I mean, we've had some cash, we were building up our fund balance and our reserves to be able to bond, last year, and so since we didn't, we have some, higher ratios and higher days cash on hand, but with some of our capital projections over the next 6 years, we are projecting those.
I'd also add, you've heard on your public comments and like some suggestions or questions about independent audit of our finances, and for the projects where we do a bond, we do get that independent audit and we get a bond rating afterwards, and they do a thorough job of looking at our plans and our finances and how things are managed and are the numbers correct and accurate and stuff like that. And for the past several bonds that we've got a AAA rating from Standard and Poor's, which is the highest that you can get. Right.
And I think that's it for my
Yes.
slides. Yeah.
So we've had Joey finish us off here with any other questions, answers, or?
I think we had lots of conversation throughout. I think the team made a really good point with Chris and Steph, but just emphasizing, we understand the financial pressures on the community and on our own. We did, for a number of reasons, but we did pull the rates down from our proposed to kind of just take inventory and look at the path forward, but we also don't want to lose ground on the condition of our infrastructure. So for the next several years, we will be drilling into that and our asset management approach and condition of our systems. And like I said previously, trying to build our level of sophistication. So.
Well, thank you all for the presentation. That was great. Stephanie, Chris, Joe. So the next, if we're ready to move on.
Ready to move on. I sense that we answered the board's questions as we went, and we'll be coming back next month with a proposal. If there are any burning questions for you or concerns, we would love to know that. Tonight preferably, but if you can follow up with us offline this weekend. Yeah, where are we going next?
We're going to matters from the board. So any board members have any matters they'd like to bring up?
You're going to talk about the drought? Or okay, but I have something to bring up with regard to that, but it's okay. Yeah, nothing else.
I had a question that I received from a community member about potable water use on Valmont Park and the irrigation needs for that area, and was just wondering, Joe or anyone else, if you could speak to that issue, if you know anything about it, and how the city and the utility staff is coordinating with the Parks Department regarding water use in outdoor parks areas. And that might be related to the drought question. So
for sure, that we can speak to that. And this year, because of the water supply conditions, our water resources team, I think we have some members online, but they have been heading up an internal coordination effort across departments, an internal drought committee, lots of coordination going on around the use of water on parks. I'm personally not familiar with the Valmont Park and whether that's potable water or not. Some of our park systems, the Parks Department actually has irrigation ditch rights, uses that to non-potable water to irrigate. But the Parks Department is mindful of only irrigating the areas of highest need. They're doing an audit of their sprinkler systems and things like that. And it used to be, I would say, in a drought 15 years ago, there would have been a lot of pressure on cities, and there still is. Like, why are you watering your own facilities? Why don't you shut that down? Yeah. But it's another example of something that in our last drought plan, as we brought forward and applied the equity tools, like, well, those are important assets to the community and continuing to irrigate them in a thoughtful way. is probably where we want to be. And I know our neighboring cities are thinking that way as well, but lots of coordination goes on internally that kind of put pressure on ourselves to be mindful with our own water use. I don't know if that helps, Catherine, but I'd be happy to follow up with that community member or have our team do that directly if they'd like more information.
Thanks, Joe. I think that's good for now.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we'll move on to matters from staff. Talk drought.
And I will talk about just kind of, given the situation that we're in and this being such a dire year across the West in terms of water supply, probably make this just a monthly, like letting you know in general where we're at. Aware here recently, national news media outlets talking about conditions, and as well as Colorado News, various aspects of the drought, including the Colorado River and some recent updates there. Our staff are tracking that. We're monitoring our own situation very closely, and demand continues to be stable. And for me, below what I would expect for such a dry year. And we're very thankful to our community.
Can you quantify that? I'm just curious how much exactly, what do you know?
I don't have graphs and metrics to share tonight, but we for sure could. I'm seeing a graph of our monthly usage trends, and it's tracking very well to the 5-year historical and not really going above that. And we're not seeing the big spikes. So I believe our community is responding to this watch and is reducing. No doubt there are people who are using too much, or especially in commercial situations where a landscaping company might set up the irrigation systems and set it and leave it. We're working on those things.
Are you, is the city, I noticed because some other cities were talking, I've seen some stories on the local news of some, I can't remember, it's Aurora, Denver, actually looking at.
Yeah.
Is Boulder doing that, or is considering doing that?
We don't have the systems in place with the AMI technology, the automatic metering. It's something we're looking at to be able to do that. Some cities have that in a year like this.
Yeah.
They can really help targeted reduction.
They've also got mandatory restrictions, and since Boulder doesn't, it's a different situation.
It's different, but I would say even in a year like this, we would look at that information and of course we don't want to be like Big Brother, but water resources are important. And if somebody's overusing, maybe unknowing, having that tool would be helpful in the future.
I hear from some people, they're actually doing mandatory restrictions. I'm told it's not necessary, but it's fine. I can't say it's not a scientific survey. So but I think certainly, right, I mean, but somebody was using a lot of water, particularly a lot more than the past years, just at least letting them know, hey, we don't have mandatory requirements, but your neighbors are cutting back and, do your part or whatever. I think at least might have an effect in this way, but if we don't have the tools, it has also needs to be done right fairly quickly. If it's a month late, then a lot less effective than within a week or something.
And in a different situation where we maybe wouldn't have a choice, we would just have to do mandatory restrictions. But with this new drought plan that we updated a couple of years ago and the drought watch level, that's the lowest one. If you think about it, it kind of gives us an opportunity to work in partnership with the community through education and messaging to reduce water use. When you get into mandatory restrictions, it becomes more of an us versus them setup. And so this is actually a good opportunity to see how, in theory, that works.
So I had a comment on, and this is sort of triggered by the Denver Post article about, 1.5 million Front Range people are not under water use restrictions, and kind of saying, kind of applying, that's terrible. And so they highlighted Ken, and that was great. Here's a story about, and you correct me, I hope I'm remembering the data right. I was really impressed. Back in the spring, we looked at it. One of the things that impressed me was how much per capita usage or per property usage has dropped since 2002. I think 30%, is that right?
Yes.
And it struck me, and one of you might have said this, had we had the same level of usage in 2002 today, we would have had to have mandatory restrictions.
Yes.
The fact that we're so far down means we could avoid that. That's a good news story.
Yeah.
And my suggestion is put that out, and maybe the media or mail, I mean, say, hey, Boulder people, you're not under manual restrictions because you're doing the right job. Keep it up and keep going.
Education and rebates help people update their appliances and whatnot, their toilets. But also that kind of education and updating has made them respond to the drought watch responsibly and curb their water use.
Yeah, and I get that the voluntary restrictions for some people, it's just not satisfying. It feels like we're not doing enough. But our team is working really hard on that internally, and so I know those news reports maybe paint a picture that the cities who don't have mandatory restrictions are doing nothing, but that is absolutely not the case. I'm talking monthly now to my peer directors in neighboring cities because of this year. And we're all coordinating on things and how we're handling it. So there's a lot happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good news story.
Yeah. So I overall, our storage is a little bit lower than average, which is, as I mentioned in a previous update, Barker didn't fill. And I would say the storage levels for our staff they're kind of where we would expect them to be. Overall, our situation continues to be stable, but we're watching it really closely. Moving on to the other topic I wanted to speak to, and it came up briefly here in the meeting. Cybersecurity has also been in the news, and we know that there have been, unfortunately, some water providers in other parts of the country who have experienced successful cyber attacks. And I don't want to talk about it in so much detail here tonight that it would give someone access to be able to do an attack. And I would say no city, no matter what measures they have, can say they're 100% immune or don't have any vulnerabilities. But I would say our system and the level of sophistication that we have, it has various layers of protection. And we employ the best practices, and it would not be very easy for someone to penetrate our system. And I think, where there have been successful attacks, I think it tends to be smaller providers who maybe just don't have the resources to be able to do it that way. And I sympathize with that. That is what I have under matters, and if I can find the upcoming agenda, or maybe I'll just use the paper copy. Yes, I will. Don't have it pulled up on my screen, but I can move into that if that's okay, Amy?
Yeah, please.
And so in September, we will have an action item as we've been talking about tonight, the capital improvement program, and I will have a public hearing and a recommendation. Possible that we'll have a project tour. I'm working with the team on what might be a candidate for that. Chris Douglas mentioned the 4 Mile Canyon and 19th Street project that could potentially be a candidate. That's, I think, mostly complete, but have to look at that. Then in October, it'll probably be all things water quality and an information item from our water quality team on a policy update, and also an information item on the Eurasian water milfoil situation, which is something that is a big work plan item. It's noted that there would be a potential tour. I think the board expressed interest in that, but there actually won't be any removal work happening in October, so there won't be anything to tour, but we can maybe flag that for next year. November, we're looking at rate study, public hearing, and recommendation potentially. That is far enough out. I'm trying to coordinate with the team and our consultants and availability, and also when we probably need to go to council that could move back potentially a month or so, but we're still on a good track with that project. We also mentioned an information item for city council letter. With it being an election and a new council being elected in November, my guess is they might want something like that early in 2027. We've typically tried to combine our water resources board retreat with the creation of a letter, so that could change as well. That is what I have for the upcoming.
Can I ask one question? So there's a public hearing next month.
Mhm.
Is it still all the public's online? Unless we do a site visit, because
Well,
when
we
we
would
did the
normally,
site visit,
no, that wouldn't affect it.
okay,
And generally, it remains to be seen. There's a lot of interest in one particular project, but generally the CIP discussion, the month that the board makes a recommendation is not as lengthy, and so there is room for a project tour. So when we do a tour, we typically do the business meeting like we would here, and then we would travel to the project site.
okay.
We would close out the business meeting, travel to the project site and do the tour. I would say the tour is, my feeling about it is maybe 50-50, whether or not we'll have something.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
well, if there are no other matters from the board, can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favors?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, see, we'll move to adjourn. Thank you
Thank you.
for all of your time and information.
We have a Joe
Hi, guys.
doing a site tour.
Okay.
Catherine.
Yes.